But that really hit home for me on a personal level when my daughter graduated from medical school 3 years ago. And for her birthday present, she asked if I would pay for her to freeze her eggs. And she had just turned 31. You don't want to freeze your eggs when you're stressed and tired, because what will you get? Stressed and tired eggs. Those aren't high quality eggs. Those are less likely to fertilize.
Health relates to everything in life. Your vitality, your ability to even go for a promotion in a job, because if you lack energy, how are you going to be able to work harder, right?
It used to be that a normal fertile man, the average normal sperm count was 80% that they looked at. Now normal is considered 4%. It's gone from 80 in 1980 to 4% in, I think, 2021 was the last one.
It almost makes me feel like if this is just for profit, I think the women are being scammed, to be honest with you, because 2% for me is not worth it at 10 grand to do it. Then you're paying 20,000 for IVF, that's 30,000. Okay, if you've got mega bucks, yeah, but the average woman is not like that.
The big question is, if the birth rates are so low right now, what's going to happen in 30 years? How are we going to plan for this?
Hey Conscious Man 7 family, quick question before we start. Do you love the depth of these conversations but hate when ads break the flow? I get it. Ads can feel like speed bumps on a highway, pulling you out of that deep zone. That's why we created a way for you to enjoy every episode completely ad-free while supporting the show at the same time. For just a few bucks a month on Patreon or Locals, you'll get full access to uninterrupted episodes. You'll get direct access to me so you can ask me any questions that you have, some cool other perks like early releases, and you'll also help us keep bringing you the powerful conversations that mainstream platforms won't touch. The link is in the show notes. Join us there and be part of this movement. Ever look up and see those dull, grey skies streaked with chemtrails, and you feel your energy sink? You're not imagining it. Something in you knows the sky isn't supposed to look that way. But what if you could bring back the blue? What if there was a way to clear the air inside you and above you? That's where the Chembo comes in. They create powerful orgonite, tools that generate orgone energy, the life force that helps neutralize EMFs from your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi, and even 5G. It's nature's way of restoring balance, bringing cleaner air, calmer energy, and deeper sleep. Every piece from the Chembo is handmade, from tactical tower busters to beautiful pyramids and jewelry, crafted with the precise ingredients to generate real orgone energy. And here's the best part. They've proven it. For over 10 years, they've cleared thousands of miles of chemtrails, bringing the blue back to the skies around the world. So if you're ready to take back your weather and your well-being, go to thechembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 for 10% off and experience the shift for yourself. Don't fear the chemtrails or the EMF. Be empowered with the Chembo and never feel helpless again. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. What if fertility is not just about having children, but a warning sign that modern life is quietly damaging human health? What if the fertility crisis is not just about women, but about men, stress, toxins, poor health, and the way we are living before we ever try to conceive? Hello, beautiful and amazing people. Welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host, Todd Cave. Today's guest is Dr. Marina Straszak-Suri, an OBGYN with over 30 years of experience, assistant professor at the University of Ottawa, and author of Optimize Your Fertility Naturally. She has been speaking publicly about something most people still do not fully understand. Fertility is not separate from health, it reflects it. And she has also been sounding the alarm on a part of this conversation that is still badly overlooked. Male fertility matters, sperm health matters, and what happens before conception matters more than most people realize. In this conversation, we go deep into what is driving fertility decline, the biggest myths around infertility, how stress, sleep, diet, toxins, and age affect reproductive health, what medicine often misses, what restorative reproductive medicine is, and what failing birth rates could mean for the future of families and society. This is one of those conversations people need to hear before regret enters the room.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You got to be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it,
Dr. Marina, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am very well, and I'm looking forward to talking to you today because when you had asked to come on the show, it hit one of the points that I have not yet covered on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. And I've talked about declining birth rates, and my audience knows my thoughts behind it, which I think is a planned agenda to depopulate the planet. But I wanted to find out some of the things that are really causing it, because from my point, and I'm a fitness trainer, I'm a coach, I think that poor health and lifestyle are contributory factors to almost all human problems in terms of health, vitality, and stuff. But also, I know someone that has tried to have children with their husband, and they've had a lot of issues. So for me as well, it was kind of you know what? Let's see what other information there is about there, because I learned a few things from her experience. But to have a doctor that specializes in this is wow, we can't get any better than that. So I wanted to find out, your thoughts on all of this, this topic and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about, your story, your experience, and why all of this matters. So after more than 30 years in obstetrics and women's health, why did you realize fertility was becoming a much bigger problem than most people understood?
Well, I think as any practicing physician, we can see over the years that our patients are getting sicker and sicker. There's more obesity, there's more diabetes, there's more autoimmune disease, and of course, there's more cancer. But the way in my office, what I see is just women, and more women are having things like endometriosis, which causes very painful periods, and polycystic ovarian syndrome, which causes irregular periods. And both of those things are causing fertility problems. So we're also seeing many more cases of infertility or difficulty getting pregnant. But that really hit home for me on a personal level when my daughter graduated from medical school 3 years ago. And for her birthday present, she asked if I would pay for her to freeze her eggs. And she had just turned 31. And I was taken aback. I mean, I shouldn't have been, because it's my specialty and I hear it all the time. But, it becomes very personal when your own kid asks you. And I realized how worried she was, despite the fact that, she still has time, but yet she's planning ahead and she understands that her career is limiting her choices and she wants to do something about it. And my initial reaction was, yes, of course I will. I want grandchildren. I'll pay for you to freeze your eggs. But she was just starting a residency program in emergency medicine at the 5th biggest trauma center in the US, like a very busy, grueling residency with a lot of hours and nights and so forth, and very stressful. And I realized you don't want to freeze your eggs when you're stressed and tired, because what will you get? Stressed and tired eggs. Those aren't high quality eggs. Those are less likely to fertilize. So that really got me thinking about, okay, so many young people now are deferring pregnancy because, either they don't have the money, or they don't have the partner, or they want to develop their careers, or like my daughter, all three. So what can they do? And my husband and I, he's also a physician, we've been interested in longevity medicine for over 25 years. And we know it's all about lifestyle. So I wanted to really have evidence to show that this is what's important, because that's not discussed in conventional medicine. When you go to the doctor, it's usually make a diagnosis, get a pill, or get surgery to fix it. Nobody talks about what are you eating, how much are you sleeping, how stressed you are. And yet those things are fundamental to our health, as you were saying. I just totally agree with you.
I find that kind of fascinating because, I mean, my journey has been that I had a massive awakening, and then I found out that everything is connected. So from the system to health to welfare, security, government, money. But what I found fascinating, because I am self-taught. I'm a coach. I'm a fitness coach. And I taught myself about nutrition because of a personal incident. When after I had surgery on my foot in 2007, I realized that I could no longer train the way I used to. And my training is really what kept me fit. So I was forced to look at nutrition. Mm-hmm. And I have had clients who've told me that they've been to nutritionists and put on weight. And I'm like, hold on a minute. I am self-taught here, and I get my clients' results through nutrition. So then I learned that most doctors, they spend a half day only in their entire studies on nutrition. And I found that even more fascinating. So I was like, hold on a minute. I'm an ex-civil engineer turned fitness coach and knows way more about food and nutrition than a doctor who I'm supposed to go to in some countries, pay money to get advice on how to be better. So that completely blew my paradigm. And I've been down this path now of just like health is the number one thing, because I think health relates to everything in life. Your vitality, your ability to even go for a promotion in a job, because if you lack energy, how are you going to be able to work harder, right?
There's nothing more important than your health, I believe, in life. And yet that isn't emphasized in our society. People don't talk about it very much.
No, at all. And I mean, I lived in Europe for almost half my life, and I have seen people just get fatter and fatter and fatter. And in North America, it's pretty much the same thing. We're pushing 70% plus in both Europe and North America for fat and obese people. So we have 30% of the population that we would say are fit to slender or medium built. And then in that 30%, there's even just a small percent of people that would be fit and healthy. So it's kind of like, for me, that's why I said at the beginning of the show that I think it's a deliberate depopulation agenda. And so I'm curious here. So what, you mentioned your daughter wanted to freeze her eggs. What did that moment bring up in you as a daughter and as a mother?
Well, as a mother, of course, total empathy and understanding, because I knew what she had gone through and she was going through, but I also felt sad that it had to come to this. From a medical point of view, it took me a little while to think about it, because I realized that what physicians in North America tend to do is immediately push towards the technological answer and say, go to the fertility clinic and they will offer you IVF. And I'm thinking there's a whole space in between of things that we can do and nobody's telling anybody, and, I think it's better in Europe, because I think part of the problem here is the North American medical training. And that really dates back. There's a historical reason for this. In that the 1910, I believe it was, the Carnegie Foundation that was very involved in the pharmaceutical industry actually hired somebody called Abram Flexner to write a report about the level of medical education in North America. And he visited all the American and Canadian medical schools, and he wrote a report about how the education could be improved. Now, his idea was it had to be more science-based, it had to be more based on studies, and that anything that wasn't science-based had to go out the window. So a lot of homeopathic schools and alternative schools closed, and I think this was detrimental. And it became focused on the pharmaceutical industry and what they could provide, and surgery. And that's where medical education went in this direction of not looking at lifestyle whatsoever. I think if you go to Europe, you're much more likely to get a well-balanced view of things. They use a lot more herbal products. They know a lot more about alternative approaches to medicine than what we do here, what we are taught in school here.
That's very interesting. I mean, right? We can, again, I guess we could go a little bit conspiratorial, and it is the Conscious Man 7, so I can't help it. But that guy, I think, was probably responsible for the decline in, or at least a huge contributing factor, because basically he was able to penetrate, whether he knew it or not, or the Carnegie Foundation knew or not, to change the exact the mindset of how the education will be taught from there. And I remember, like, when the pandemic started in 2020, I got mad into research. And what I discovered is that they used to treat patients in the up to the 1920s. They had outside wings where patients would just lie in the sun early in the morning to get sun. And then in the evening as well, they could, because those are the time periods where the sun is not as its strongest and you can get the benefits from it. And that now would be seen kind of mad, like just lay in the sun. But in actual fact, it works, right? So what you're saying is true. All the homeopathic stuff is just gone. There's nothing in it anymore. It's just take a pill and that's it. I mean, I think one thing that Western medicines get really good is like emergency medicine, like accidents and surgery and that kind of stuff. But the other part, I think, is a bit imbalanced. So what did conventional medicine get right about fertility, and what did it leave out?
Well, I think the basic workup of, a couple who's having trouble getting pregnant will be things like, asking a woman about her menstrual periods, whether they're regular, whether they're painful, whether she, try to find out whether she's ovulating with several tests. You want to make sure her fallopian tubes are open. You want to make sure the man's sperm count is good. And, obviously that's basic fertility that needs to be done. It's important because that's the basis of the system, the reproductive system. However, what's ignored is the fact that everything else in your health impacts your reproductive system. I mean, if you are sick with autoimmune disease, if you have diabetes, it's going to affect your reproductive system. You can't just ignore it as if it's not a factor. And yet that's what's happening in conventional medicine.
Interesting that diabetes would affect as well. I never thought about that. I mean, I know for sure that if you're overweight, it significantly reduces your ability to conceive. And then you said something that was kind of interesting, because if your daughter is stressed, she would get poor quality eggs. So even understanding that if you were to do that, you would need to make sure that the body is in a state of calm and peace. And basically I spoke with another doctor, and she said that basically a woman's body needs to feel like it is not in danger. Yes. And like the body itself. So once it feels like it's safe, then conception can occur, because even if you're ovulating and your body itself energetically feels stressed, not safe, no matter how much you try, it's going to be very difficult to conceive. And I found that even more fascinating because I think most people just think, well, you're ovulating, it's time, let's do it. But there seem to be a lot more factors involved.
So, think in a way, we haven't evolved past caveman days in terms of our genetics and our physiology. So, can you imagine a cave woman getting pregnant in a situation where is dangerous? That's not a good thing. So it's the body has a certain wisdom. It's saying this right now, your life is in danger. You need to escape the situation. You do not need to get pregnant and have a child. So it actually makes sense that it wouldn't let you get into that situation. Nowadays, we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing us, but we have things that in our stressed lives that give us the same hormonal, the cortisol, the norepinephrine. Those impact everything in our lives. They make, they put more muscle flow to the muscles, blood flow to the muscles so you can run away or fight the tiger. But, at the deficit of the brain is losing the blood supply. So when you're very stressed, you're not very smart. You're having a cortisol reaction that is helping you fight a physical situation, but not, the stress of your bad, your relationship or your situation at your job, So we have to think back to the way that we were designed millions of years ago because our bodies still work that way.
You know what? That's a really good way to put it. I never thought of it that when you get stressed, the blood doesn't go to the brain, so you actually can't think right. Now, I just used to look at it as a situation of because there's a flood of emotions, then the emotions take over from the brain. But I guess that's like a somewhat scientific way to put it, where, yeah, because if you're stressed, the blood is going to go to all the parts of the body to be able to run away, to fight danger and stuff like that. So obviously, if there's no blood going to the brain, you can't think. So that makes so much sense. No,
that has to be a situation that's automatic and an automatic response to a fight, flight, or freeze situation. But that's not very helpful for us in this society where we're dealing with completely different problems than saber-toothed tigers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what does fertility reveal about the body that most people miss until they are already in trouble?
Well, basically, fertility is a reflection of your overall health. You could consider it a vital sign. So vital signs are things like your blood pressure, your pulse, your respiratory rate. Those are all descriptors of how our body is functioning. Well, fertility is just like that. And if it's working well, that's a sign that you must be pretty healthy. If it's not working well, there's a problem. But what is the problem? It's very complex. It's all these intertwined systems that are working together. So you need to spend a bit of time to figure it out. It's not as simple as, sperm reaching egg and through the fallopian tube and implanting in the uterus. There's something else going on.
So I would assume that is applicable to men as well, because if a man's fertility is low, sperm count, then his overall health must not be at its optimum, no?
That's right. That's right. And, I mentioned my husband and I are both physicians, and we were just talking about this the other day. He says, I have 3 young, healthy guys who have 0 sperm. He says, I've never seen this before. And this goes back. I don't know if you've heard of Professor Shauna Swan. She wrote a book called Countdown in 2017. And she's basically the one who alerted the world to the fact that men's sperm counts have decreased by more than 50% in 2 generations. And basically what she's saying in a nutshell is it's our lifestyle, but she's really pointing to chemicals in the environment. And there's a fascinating documentary on Netflix called The Plastic Detox. It just came on, here in Canada, it just came on a few weeks ago, where this professor took 6 couples in California who were all having trouble getting pregnant. And she basically put them on a plastic detox for 3 months. She taught them how to avoid plastics in, where they're buying things. And she was just looking at plastic, not everything else in lifestyle. And at the end, 3 of the couples got pregnant, and one of them had been trying for 10 years.
Wow, that is
You have
levels.
to watch that documentary. Anybody trying to get pregnant should watch that documentary.
Wow, that's levels. So I'm curious. So when your husband said they have zero sperm count, like
Yeah.
what were their T levels like? Because I would assume that the T levels would have been a bit low then, because testosterone tends to control everything.
Yeah, so I didn't ask him that question, but you're right. He is. I don't see men, so you're right. He is seeing younger and younger men with erectile dysfunction and very low T levels.
Okay, so do you have any idea, or do you don't see men what like a good T level is for a man? Because obviously there's a range.
So yeah, it's a range, and I am not the person to ask because I really don't have male patients other than as husbands to my patients.
Okay.
See them as a couple when fertility is an issue, but I'm not an expert in testosterone or.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was curious because I remember I had some blood work done about 7 months ago, and when the results came back, the lady looked at me like kind of strange. I said, she asked me, "Are you on any hormones?" I said, "Huh? Hormones? What are you talking about?" She says, "For your age, your T levels are very high." I said, "Oh, really?" She says, "Although I could tell because you have a very low body fat and you're very well built muscly." So she says it kind of made sense. But she says I had to ask. Basically, she was asking me if it was on steroids or TRT. Right. But yeah. I'm completely natural. So I was kind of like, wondering what the average, because she didn't tell me what the average was, she just said that you have very high T levels for your age. So I was just curious,
Yeah. So and being in Canada, it's different than the United States because we use different ways of measuring. So I wouldn't even be able to quote, what it is for men in the United States. But speaking of the testosterone that people are taking, the steroids, what young men who are doing muscle building don't realize is that the synthetic steroids they're using is actually decreasing their natural steroid levels. And that's one of the reasons for fertility problems, anabolic steroids. Very dangerous for anybody who wants to get, have children.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is why I would never touch the stuff because I know how to train and, I felt kind of good. It vindicated all the stuff that I do. And she said that for my age, my T levels are way higher than the average. So why do you say the menstrual cycle should be treated like a fifth vital sign?
So it's an indicator of your health. And if it's not functioning properly, there is something wrong. And as I was mentioning, I'm seeing more and more women with endometriosis, with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's affecting the menstrual cycle. Yet when young women go to the doctor complaining of these things, well, they usually go to a family doctor. And unfortunately, family doctors, they don't have terribly much education in fertility. What they would tend to do to help the woman is to put her on a birth control pill, which will regulate the cycles and decrease the pain in most situations. So the patient actually goes away happy. But in between, there was never a discussion of these factors may affect your fertility. And what we're doing here is we're covering up the issue. But as soon as you go off the pill, it's going to come back. So a woman thinks she's fine for 20 years and then decides it's time to get pregnant. She goes off the birth control pill. And guess what? She's either not having periods or they're terribly painful and she can't get pregnant. In those 20 years, she could have done things to improve her health and improve those situations. But unfortunately, no, it's just the birth control pill she was on.
Okay, so I'm curious because, you would say that they would put a woman on the pill to regulate it. So if a woman has an irregular cycle, does that also indicate that there's something else there? Because a woman tends to generally be 28 days. So is there a deeper issue if she's very irregular?
Yes. The most common issue is this condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a hormonal irregularity, which causes the woman not to ovulate regularly. And ovulation is actually what brings your next period on. And if you don't ovulate, you might not get your next period, or you'll only get one down the road when the lining in the uterus builds up to the point where it just bleeds out. So you can get irregular, heavy, painful cycles and not be able to get pregnant because you're not ovulating regularly. And that's very, very common. It's also associated with obesity and increased testosterone levels in women.
Wow, that is very interesting. So the period comes because of ovulation. Mm-hmm. So if a woman has had children before and she's still irregular, would it be such a situation there that it was just like luck then that she got pregnant because You're saying that the ovulation was not like timed and sequential?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Now, 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. So there's often a lot of luck involved. The thing is, when somebody wants to start planning a pregnancy and they can't rely on their next period coming regularly, it makes it really difficult.
Wow, this is very, very interesting because it's only like because I have a friend that was trying to get pregnant that I started to actually learn about these things, because we're not really taught about these things. And I guess from a simpleton's point of view is just like, okay, you there's certain days of the month that you can get pregnant. You do it then. That's it. That's how it works. But it seems to be a lot more nuanced and a lot more detailed into it. So for someone then that has like an irregular period like that, what are some of the things that they could do to improve the cycle? Because if you were 35, 40, 50 days, mm-hmm. it's showing a bigger issue. So what are some of the little simple things that can be done to bring down the regularity, to make it more regular?
So this has changed a lot in the years since I've been in practice, because when I started practice 35 years ago, most of these women were overweight. Now we realize that there's a lot of women who have this problem who aren't overweight, and there's probably different issues for different populations. But we used to tell women, lose weight and your cycle will regulate, which could happen to some of those women. But these women actually have insulin resistance as well, because it's more than one hormonal thing. It's a mishmash. They tend to have insulin resistance, which makes it very difficult for them to lose weight. So to send them home and say, lose weight and you'll get pregnant is not very helpful, even though it can work. Now we know a lot more about it. We know that women with this condition are low in naturally occurring inositol, which is a naturally occurring sugar that we make in our bodies that plays a role in insulin metabolism. So the first thing I do is supplement all these women with this supplement called myo-inositol. I also do things like vitamin D levels. A lot of them tend to have low vitamin D. And we now know that vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And it plays a role in fertility. It plays a role in almost everything. And I live in Canada where we don't have enough sun, and most people are low in vitamin D. Yet most people are not necessarily taking it or measuring it. Also, I supplement with omega-3s if they're naturally occurring HDL, which is your good cholesterol. And when it's low, omega-3s help. And that seems to play a role. A lot of these women are low in B12. So through this process, I've learned a lot more about supplementation and vitamins that I was never taught in medical school, but I'm now realizing how important they are. It's crazy, actually. I feel like I'm becoming a naturopath in my old age, which is fine. I'm very happy about that.
Well, I am being schooled here because, like I said, I think most people, especially men, we don't really think that it is so, I don't want to say complicated, but there's so much nuance to it. There's so much more behind it because, like you said, 50% of pregnancies are accidental or unplanned. So I guess it was just the grace of God that happened. But for the other 50% that want to, it may not be even that easy, which is what I've learned from my friend and talking to you as well, which is I find fascinating. So Have we made the mistake of treating fertility like something we can deal with later instead of something shaped by years of health choices?
Yes, I think so. I think we need to be teaching women much younger. In high school, there's these sex education classes, right? And when I think about it, I think they're really geared towards preventing teen pregnancy, which was seen to be a major issue. It's much less of an issue now than it was when I was young, probably because there are so many fertility issues and so forth. But instead of being afraid of their fertility, women need to realize that it's a gift and that it has to do with their health. They need, both men and women need to be taught about fertility in high school and understand it better. Now, I know it's a difficult time because they're not there yet, and they're thinking it's going to happen in 20 years if they even think about it. So it's a difficult thing to approach, but there is terrible lack of information. There was a big study of 70,000 women, and I believe that only 11% of them understood when in the cycle they were able to get pregnant. Most of them had no education or understanding of their fertility or how it worked. So
I find that
really need to
fascinating.
do better.
I find that fascinating because I guess maybe this is just me being a man as logical. I would have thought that a mother would have educated her daughter that, hey, now you are becoming an adolescent, you have a period. No, because of that, it means you're fertile. So you have X days to be fertile, XYZ. But I'm fascinated that doesn't occur because I'm a boy, so I never had that conversation.
That's right. I think there's still a lot of embarrassment about this issue. And when the issue of periods comes up, the first thought is sex. You can't have sex because you're going to get pregnant or you're going to get, STIs and nobody flips the coin and says, well, this is a sign of your fertility and this is what that means. It's really unfortunate.
It is. I think it's a bit of like a mindset shift because instead of necessarily thinking about sex, if you flip it to fertility, I think it can sort of like seed the consciousness about health, because to have fertility, you have to have health. So if you take care of health, then by consequence or as a result, you would take precautions to have safe sex then, because, you may not want to have a child now, but you want to make sure you're still healthy, that you could. So it's almost like as a mindset shift to the same subject, because it's still talking about sex, but it's coming at from another angle, which I think is more important because the fertility leads back to health, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So sticking with health then, what do you see as the main drivers of fertility decline today?
So everything about our lifestyles, the food we eat. Okay, it's been shown that women who eat fast food more than 4 times a week are less fertile. It's the same for men. Their sperm counts are lower. So the quality of food, the amount of food, the pesticides in food. Pesticides are endocrine disrupting chemicals. They affect our reproductive system. So, it would be ideal if we could all afford to eat organic food all the time, but of course that's not happening. I do refer people to the Environmental Working Group. Do you know who they are?
No, I've never heard of them.
They are a US-based organization, not for profit, that educate people about pollution and how to mitigate the effects of pollution on our bodies. And they do a number of really good things. Like they have an app called the Healthy Living app that you can download on your phone, and you can scan products to see how toxic they are. So literally you can use that app to start buying less toxic products in your home. And, a lot of the chemicals that we're exposed to, we expose ourselves to. It's our personal care products, our shampoos, our conditioners, our body washes. A lot of them have crap in them. And, some of them may advertise as natural, but sometimes the ads aren't even true. So using this kind of app, you can really improve your surrounding environment in your home. They also publish a list called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Does that sound familiar?
No.
The Dirty Dozen, every year they publish this list. It's the dozen fruits and vegetables that contain the most pesticides. So those you really want to eat organic if you can. The Clean 15 are the fruits and vegetables that have the least pesticides in general, and those you can get away with buying non-organic. They also have a tap water database where you can look up your zip code anywhere in the United States and see what are the contaminants in the tap water. So my daughter moved to a small town in New Jersey, so I use this database because I'm jealous, actually. They don't have Canada on the database, so I can't look up my tap water, but it can't be that different from the United States.
True.
Anyway, she had 13 contaminants that were way above toxic levels, and one of them was chloroform, which is an anesthetic agent that I don't even think is being used anymore, but it was in her water at 258 times the upper limit of acceptable. She also had hexavalent chromium, which, if you remember the story from California, Erin Brockovich. You remember that Erin Brockovich movie?
That name sounds familiar.
Okay, she was a paralegal who worked in a small town in California and realized that a lot of people were dying from cancer in her small town. She started investigating, and it turned out that there was a gas company that was leaching this hexavalent chromium into the water supply that people were drinking. And she actually brought about the biggest lawsuit in the United States at the time. It was a $300 million lawsuit against the Pacific Gas and Oil Company. The water was so bad that they had to evacuate the town. Everybody just left. But anyway, it was a big story, and they made a movie about it, the Erin Brockovich movie, and she became quite famous as a person who talked about the environment and the importance of environmental things. This was in the 1990s. So this stuff is in my daughter's water now at over levels that are considered toxic.
Well, I can see why some people, when they start to learn these things, that they become a little bit black-pilled, because you would almost not want to go to your house. You would almost not want to eat. You would almost not want to drink anything and want to become a breatharian, because you think that it'd be safer, right? But I try to tell people that do what is reasonable, what you can afford, what is in your control, and the rest, just let go, and in civil engineering, we call it the risk as low as reasonably possible, Right. So if you take that approach, then, you wouldn't get black-pilled and want to become a breatharian, because it's kind of scary when you get into it. Like your water, your food, the pesticides, spraying in the air, everything is almost like, is what I said. I think it's personally a depopulation agenda. The system is rigged against us,
I don't know if I'd look at it that way. I think it all has to do with money. And in North America, we have let these large companies dictate our lives, and without question. They're spewing out, there's over, how many chemicals? 85,000 different chemicals in the atmosphere that are unregulated, because nobody looks at that. I mean, they're supposed to be looking at it, but there's just too many of these chemicals to be able to really analyze them all and make sure they're healthy and to control it. It's a really difficult situation. I can understand it's difficult for the government, but they got to do a better job, because this is killing all of us.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be a negative person, because I'm not a negative person. I think there's things we can do, and I'm doing it, and I'm getting my family to do it, but it's scary. It really is.
Oh, yeah. So how much of this crisis is really a stress crisis in disguise?
What do you mean by that question? What do you mean by a stress crisis?
So I find that on my side, when I coach people, a part of the issue that they have is stress. Not being able to eat enough food, or they eat too much food. So you have people that can't put on weight because they're stressed and they don't eat. Mm-hmm. Then they have, on the flip side, people that eat too much because they're stressed. So I was trying to figure out now if stress now is as big as a factor, how I see it on my side with coaching clients.
Oh, yes. Oh, for sure. Stress is a huge factor. Now, we all have stress. How you manage your stress is what's important. And some people are much better at managing it, probably because they've consciously realized, okay, this is stressing me, that is stressing me. My job is stressing me. I can't quit my job, but I can maybe repair things with my coworker or my boss to make things manageable. You need to consciously think about how you're going to deal with this. And there's ways that we all deal with stress differently, whether it's getting together with friends, whether it's having a massage, whether it's exercising, whether it's meditation. There are a lot of powerful things that you can do, but you have to find an answer for yourself because the statistics are there. Stress affects your health and your fertility too. Stressed people, like I told you, stressed, tired eggs are less likely to fertilize.
Yes, that is very interesting concept because I know a friend that has frozen her eggs, and no thinking about it, I don't even think she considered that because I know that with the job she had, very high stress, high demand, work a lot of hours. So she may not even have had good quality eggs that she froze, you know?
Exactly. The way that fertility clinics approach it is by getting as many eggs as possible. And they figure the more egg count, the more likely you'll get some good ones. And the older you get, they try to get more and more, and they try to get you to do the process a few times so that you get more eggs. So they're just going by numbers, because you really can't measure egg quality internally, right? Mind you, IVF clinics now are using artificial intelligence. When they extract eggs, they will have them photographed and use AI. From the photographs, they look at the nucleolus, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the cell wall, and AI can tell you what's the likelihood that egg is going to fertilize so that they can choose the better one, the better egg for the IVF. So, like there's progress, but we can't do that in our ovaries yet. Maybe one day we'll be able to. I don't know.
Wow, that is very interesting, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, AI is solving a lot of complex problems. Now, you said earlier that nutrition does affect fertility. So how exactly does it affect fertility more than people realize?
So there's a lot of factors when it comes to nutrition. First, you have to consider the junk in the nutrition, whether it's the pesticides or the microplastics or whatever, because they affect our bodies. But there's also things like blood sugar. Blood sugar control is actually very important in fertility, because if there is not good control and your insulin levels go up, that can affect your reproductive function as well. So it's a complex system. It's not just one system, but there's a lot of studies that look at different diets. For instance, the Mediterranean diet is probably the best studied in health in general. And if they compare women on a Mediterranean diet compared to women on what's called the standard American diet, which is a pretty unhealthy diet, fertility rates are definitely higher on the Mediterranean diet. So there's a lot of literature on that, but it's not really being talked about in medical offices because the education of the physicians isn't there, or the interest, perhaps. I don't know.
Okay, so why has the male side of fertility been overlooked for so long?
Well, because the woman carries the baby, and if it doesn't go well, she has the miscarriage, it's easy to blame the woman for it all. And I think there was also a lack of knowledge scientifically. We now know that the sperm is very important for the formation and function of the placenta. The placenta is what keeps the baby alive. And we now know a lot of early miscarriages are actually sperm problems that weren't recognized before. There is better testing you can do other than just a semen analysis. There's what's called DFI, which is DNA. I can't remember the term right now. It's basically looking at the DNA of the sperm. You can have normal looking sperm, but there's DNA breaks in it, and it can cause problems and cause increased risk of miscarriages. So we now know that the male part is much greater than was believed before, which absolutely makes sense. It takes two to tango, but there's recognition that there wasn't there before.
That is interesting because I don't think most men even know that their sperm actually is a factor. Again, we're just taught, well, you just put the sperm there and it would happen, you know? So I think this is very...
Sperm quality is also important. The World Health Organization has normal measures of what a fertile man's sperm count should be. They've been doing this since 1980. Over every few years, they keep revising what normal fertile men's sperm should be like. And they do a count, like what the concentration, how well they move, whether they look normal or not. So they look at all these different factors. So one is morphology, the appearance of the sperm under the microscope. It used to be that a normal fertile man, the average normal sperm count was 80% that they looked at. Now normal is considered 4%.
Pardon? 4%?
4. It's gone from 80 in 1980 to 4% in, I think, 2021 was the last one.
Wow, that is levels.
That tells you something, right?
Okay, so what should men hear in the collapse of sperm counts that lands as responsibility, not just fear?
So I think they have to recognize that they're 50% of the equation, and then their health is just as important as their partner's health. You know, there's studies now showing that sedentary men who watch too much TV, their sperm counts go down. You know, we're getting a lot more data about these things that are being studied, and the extra testing that they're doing now on sperm and the DNA problems in sperm is giving us a lot more information. We're at the point now where it's not only women have to take prenatal vitamins, most men have to take prenatal vitamins as well.
What?
They just don't know that.
Wow. So this conversation I find super fascinating because I guess maybe for me, because I am into fitness and I eat really well, I exercise, I sleep, and I take a lot of supplementation to basically help with like normal things like ashwagandha, shilajit, that kind of stuff. And as a byproduct, my body works really well, which is why the lady that did the blood work said that my T levels are way higher than the average man. Now, I just thought that because now, again, because I think as a man, if I have high T levels, I can recover faster. I can build more muscle. But as a result, I'll be healthier. Yeah. So the supplementation that I take is for fitness and health and vitality. But to hear you say that men should be taking prenatal supplements, like, this is like, I've never heard of that before. I guess would things like the shilajit and ashwagandha and that kind of stuff be stuff that would be in there, the bag of tricks for supplementation?
Probably not, because there are more studied things like CoQ10, which is really good for your mitochondria. A lot of reproductive issues are actually mitochondrial problems. So, you know, CoQ10 is a really big one. I can't list them all off, but there are ones that are more studied. Shilajit is not very well known. It might be very good in reproductive medicine, but I've never seen any research on it. You know, ashwagandha is used more in sort of stress and cortisol response, which could be very helpful. But again, I don't think there's a lot of research in the reproductive area. Though I'm sure they're contributing to your own good health and is part of it. The thing with supplementation is that there's so much out there. There's so much literature. There's so much. It's a little bit. It's difficult for people to read about and learn about. But if you research this, you'll see that there are prenatal vitamins for men now. There's different companies that make them, and they use the best research stuff in it.
Well, okay, that's interesting. And I would piggyback on that and say, guys, just get into great shape. You know what I mean? Yes. Get into great shape. Most of your problems are going to be solved, right? So what gets missed when male fertility is reduced to sperm count alone?
So the more subtle things, as I was mentioning, the early miscarriages that patients get very upset when they have one miscarriage, but when they have two miscarriages, they're even more upset. And in our training, we were taught to only investigate if there are 3 miscarriages in a row with the same partner. And the thinking was there may be a genetic problem there. But the fact is that genetic problems are actually a very small percentage of these miscarriages, and that there's a lot else contributing to it that we just don't understand enough about. And it's very hard to find the reason. We usually do investigations on people of recurrent miscarriages. We don't usually find the reason.
Okay, so I'm curious. So I recently heard again that a woman's body can be like allergic to, but that's the word that was told to me, to the semen, right?
Yeah.
So again, I just found that fascinating because all this information came from my friend. So if that's the case, is it a situation of just like pure compatibility, or is it something else where it could be on his side where he's not having good sperm counts or health or vitality, or is it on her side then where she's not doing something, or there's something with her health that she needs to look at? Because I found that when she said it was like, he's like allergic to me, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So can you bring a little bit of like clarity to that?
Is actually a very complex area, and immunology in pregnancy is up and coming, because I'll actually preface this by saying, first of all, you have to realize that the whole idea of a pregnancy in a mother with foreign DNA being accepted in her body is a very complicated process. Because if you were to implant some foreign DNA into a mother that is not in a pregnancy, she would have a reaction, right? You would have a response. Like, for instance, when you do a heart transplant, you have to subdue the immune system so it's not rejected, because otherwise it'll be rejected by the immune system. So why then is a fetus that's half foreign DNA not being rejected by the mother? So there's very complex immune issues that are going on for the mom to accept that pregnancy. Her immune system has to block certain antibodies to accept the baby. So that actually sets off a complex issue, because if mom has autoimmune disease where she's having a lot of antibodies against different things in her own body, she might start developing antibodies to other things, for instance, her partner's sperm. This has to do with all the autoimmune disease we're seeing now, which is probably sparked by dietary issues. So it's quite complex. The other issue is that a man can develop antibodies to his own sperm as well. So it's not just the woman against the man, it's the man against his own sperm. And both of those conditions can affect fertility. So there are clinics that now are looking at treatments for this, but it's still considered very experimental, and it's not mainstay treatment. So I have a whole chapter on this in my book just because it's so fascinating, but it's actually so complex, it's hard to understand.
But yeah, this is why I said I asked that question, because like again, I have never heard of, like, she said, yeah, his sperm, my body is allergic to his sperm, and I was like, how is that possible, right? So I think that this conversation is bringing a lot of lifting the veil on a lot of underlying challenges that people have, and they may not even know why they're having the challenges, because we're simply not taught about fertility at all. It's just, but you get a certain age, just practice safe sex, basically, and that's it, right? So guys, we can take a very short break here to say, if this conversation is opening your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Like this episode, subscribe to the Conscious Man 7 podcast, and send this to one man or one woman in your life, especially someone who thinks they have endless time, or someone who still thinks fertility is only a woman's issue. While you're there, follow us on Instagram at Adriano_246, at the Conscious Man 7 podcast, or Todd Cave on Facebook to see what we get up to during the week and see how I merge fitness consciousness, and spirituality to help people not only get into the best shape of their lives, but also level up in other areas of their lives. Don't forget to check out the sponsor of our show, The Kembo, at thekembo.com to get yourself some cool orgonite pyramids, tower busters, and jewelry which create orgone energy, which is the life source energy and neutralizes the nasty EMF waves that we are constantly bombarded with. Use coupon code CM7 and get 10% off your order. Now back to Dr. Marina. Okay, what are the biggest misconceptions about infertility that you wish people would stop repeating?
Well, we've already alluded to that. The concept that it's always the woman's fault if there's a problem. That is the biggest misconception in my view.
Yeah, I'm learning that as well, because I think that unfairly now from this conversation, I think is mostly put at her feet. But it, like you said, it takes two to tango. And I think that, both men and women need to take their health in general more seriously, So you speak about increasing the fertility span. What can women realistically do to protect fertility for longer, and where do people get sold false hope?
So you know that everybody ages differently. By the time somebody is 60, one person may look 40 and the other person may look 80, and they both may be 60 years old, right? So there's a difference between your chronological age and your biological age. Now there's a lot of research looking at ways that we can measure biological age. And there's many ways of doing this actually, but the most accepted method at this point is based on Stephen Horvath's research into the epigenetic clock. They're using epigenetics or methylation, which is a chemical process that affects our DNA, to try to determine what your biological age is. So what I'm saying through my research, if you maintain a younger biological age than your chronological age, you are more likely to be able to be fertile for longer in your life. So again, it goes down to how do you do that? Through lifestyle. Now, there are also interesting research areas such as using platelet-rich plasma, which, are you aware of platelet-rich plasma?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay, this is something that's derived from your own blood, and it's the platelet-rich portion, which is extracted through specific processes, can be used in regenerative medicine to regenerate tissues. So you can re-inject it back into the body. This became known about 20, 30 years ago. It was used by high-level athletes who were using it to regenerate muscle tissue so that they could go back on the field after injury very quickly. And it was only available to them because it was a very expensive process. But over time, the price has gone down, so it's more available. There are more people doing it. And it's been recognized that you can use it in all parts of the body. So my husband and I have been using this in our clinic for probably 10 years now. And literally, actually, my husband's an expert. He will re-inject, he'll inject platelet-rich plasma into joints for arthritis pain, into the scalp to regrow hair for balding individuals, on the face for aesthetic reasons, into the penis for erectile dysfunction. He literally injects it into almost every part of the body. Now, I tend to only use it in gynecology, but I do use it for improving orgasms and for urinary incontinence. So they're now doing research of injecting it into ovaries to extend a woman's reproductive age. And there was just a case report last week of one woman who is 45 and one woman who is 47 who conceived using this technology. And this is being offered in some places around the world. I don't think there's any place in Canada. I've heard of places in the United States using it. It's supposed to be more for only research, but it is being offered to some patients, and there is some good results. But it's very early days. This is progressing.
My question is it very expensive if you can get it?
So It depends what you're doing it for, what the equipment you're being used at. It is being offered at different price levels. But I would say for injecting a joint, it's probably around $2,000. But that's probably a huge variation of depending who's offering it, and I know there's big prices in equipment, like differences in price. We got our equipment from the United States. The kits have to come from the United States. Now we're having difficulty importing it, and the taxes are very high with what's going on in the world. So the prices are going up. Because you have to have these special kits to be able to prepare the platelet-rich plasma.
I'm wondering how that would compare to stem cells, because stem cells...
So it's much cheaper than stem cells, because stem cells you need to derive from the tissue. Stem cells would be 5 to 10 times the price. But, you're in Mexico. There's a lot of Mexican clinics that are doing it for very cheap. A lot of Canadians, and I'm sure Americans as well, go to Mexico for their stem cell treatments.
Absolutely. And I know a place in Puerto Vallarta that does it, and a fraction of the cost than what you would get it in North America, United States, Canada.
It's
and
worth the
Europe.
trip. It's worth the trip to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where can egg freezing be genuinely useful, and where is it being sold as reassurance?
So it certainly can be useful, especially in a situation, where there is no partner and there is really no timeline. You have no idea when you'll be ready to have a baby. So it's a sort of insurance, but it's not great insurance, because you've got to remember the quality of the eggs is important. They have to survive long-term freezing, like if you're going to use it in 10 years or 15 years. And, the chance that one frozen egg will actually turn into a live birth is only 2.75%. It's a very low chance.
Wow.
When you look at the statistics. The other statistic that's interesting is that only 12% of the eggs that are frozen by women are ever used. Now, you could look at that and say, well, maybe they don't need them, but that's not the reality. The reality is that they don't find themselves in a situation where they can use it, or, other events have happened in their lives, but most are never used.
That is very interesting. Again, all of this is stuff that is very new to me. So when you hear about freezing eggs, because we've heard it on TV and movies, etc., like that, you wouldn't think that there's such a low success rate with it. You said 2%. That is almost, when you think about it, I think is a waste of money, because at 2%, that is, I think, less than the chance of winning. Well, maybe the chance of winning a lottery, maybe. Who knows? But it's so low. That is you need
so low,
90.
And I don't think women are being told that. I think they're being sold on the potential without having the full information. And that's why I wrote a full chapter on it in my book, because I wanted women to realize that they're much better off improving their health early in life than trying to rely on freezing eggs and hoping for the best.
Well, yes, it's basically giving them hopium, because if 2%, honestly, I wouldn't do anything with the chances of 2%. I would rather take my chances of not doing it, because it is a cost, and I'm assuming that it's not cheap to do in terms of the procedure and the freezing, right?
The other thing is that, so you may pay $10,000 to freeze your eggs, but once you do that, the only way you could become pregnant is by doing IVF. So you're going to have to pay another $20,000 down the line to actually use those eggs. That's the reality.
Wow.
It's an expensive deal, and it's only going to get more expensive.
It almost makes me feel like if this is just for profit, because if they know that the numbers are so low and they're giving hopium to women, right? Now, I think the women are being scammed, to be honest with you, because 2% for me is not worth it at 10 grand to do it. Then you're paying 20,000 for IVF. That's 30,000. Okay, if you've got mega bucks, okay, but the average woman is not like that. You know,
The
it's
average
almost like a
woman
scam.
the reality is the average woman cannot afford it. This is really for the elite.
But
That's
yeah,
the
this is
truth.
what I think is a scam because average women are thinking, yeah, you know, I've got time, I can freeze my eggs, X, Y, Z, and then reality hits, and then it's like, you know, it crushes them. So you speak about restorative reproductive medicine. What is it, and how does it differ from the IVF model, the IVF first model, and why does that distinction matter?
It is very important. Restorative reproductive doctors are really, I call them the masters of the menstrual cycle. They are super experts in variations of the menstrual cycle and how to improve the menstrual cycle and ovulation using small amounts of hormones or other medications. Their idea is to leave the eggs in the body, improve your chance of ovulation and egg health, and get pregnant that way. Whereas IVF is much more of a technological answer where they say, okay, make as many eggs as possible. So they give you high amounts of hormones so you super ovulate, which is not a very fun process. And then they get harvest as many eggs as they can. They take the sperm and the conception happens outside of the body. So that's why test tube baby. It happens in a petri dish, and then they reimplant the embryo. So it all happens outside of the body. Now, my argument is that in most cases, it doesn't have to happen outside of the body. But that's just the way that the technology was made, and that's the way that it's always applied. And yet it doesn't have to be that way for most people. So these specialists take a much more natural approach. They look at lifestyle much more. They will really spend time with you. It's more of a functional medicine approach, but it takes very special training. And there's very few people in the world who do it. But there is now a society, an international society of restorative reproductive medicine. They've actually been around for over 20 years. They now have their own research journal, and they're sharing more information, and they're becoming better known in the world because people are getting more interested in more natural approaches. So I'm hoping there's going to be more information and more training, and that people speak about it more.
Okay, so you said something that sparked my interest. You said that they would improve her ovulation. So when you say improve her ovulation, is it in terms of the hormones that she produces during ovulation?
Well, they try to get the woman to ovulate. Normally, you ovulate 1 egg per month. Occasionally, it's 2, and you can get twins, right? What they try to do is to get a woman to ovulate 10 or 15 at once. So they have to give you super high levels of hormones. This is not physiological. This is like, this is pushing the system to the max. And that's why women who are undergoing like egg freezing and IVF, they are on such high doses of hormones. It's really stressful. They feel awful during this process.
They feel awful, so like almost like sick?
They feel very emotional. They cry easily. They're fatigued. It's not a pleasant process to do any of this.
Okay, wow. So that's insane. You know what I mean? So, but then it's almost like, okay, let me take a step back here because I just had an idea. So if they're giving her all of these hormones and you're saying that it's difficult for a female, then she becomes more emotional. I'm assuming she becomes stressed. Wouldn't that contribute to the quality of the eggs then because she's in a stressful state?
Yes, it would. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Let me take another step back. So it's almost seeming to me like it's counterproductive because if the egg quality is not good, I don't want to say it's a scam, but it feels scammy because is going against the natures of how her body works.
Very unnatural process.
Because you were saying earlier that through evolution of humans, if a female is in a stress state, her body will naturally protect her from getting pregnant. So that means they're if she's taking these hormones and she's producing all these eggs, which isn't natural, and you're saying that is a difficult time for her, I'm assuming then that she's stressed. And even being more emotional will also create some sort of stress. So it's almost like their approach is numbers and not quality. But if you have 15 eggs that are poor quality, there's still 15 eggs of poor quality. So the chances would be low. So, okay, I've got a question. How, you said that the freezing the eggs is like 2%. So in terms of success rate for IVF, how successful is that? Or what are like the rates like?
So it depends on the woman's age and the woman's health. You know, women only have so many eggs, and that's why they go into menopause when they run out of eggs. So as a woman gets older, her egg quality and number go down. So older a woman is, the less the success rate. But just in general, it's about, if you look at all age groups lumped together, it's about 30% chance per cycle. So on average, a woman would need 2.5 cycles to have a healthy pregnancy. So what's happening in around the world is they realize that fertility rates are decreasing. So for instance, in Canada, many provinces are paying for one cycle of IVF if a woman is having trouble getting pregnant. But the chance that she'll bring home a baby is only around 30% or even lower if she's older. So it's not really going to change the population. They should be funding at least 3 cycles if they want to make sure you come home with a baby. But again, that's a very expensive proposition. So that's not happening at this point. At some point, maybe governments are going to have to realize that it has to happen because fertility rates are so low that we're not going to have a workforce in 30 or 40 years. There'll be nobody to pay taxes. I mean, how is society going to run with the fertility rates we have right now?
That is almost soul crushing, because imagine that we're being told IVF is a solution, and then one is so costly, and then two, the rates you're saying from top to bottom is 30%. That means that you're saying you need 2.5 cycles at least. So if it's 20,000 to do, we're talking about going into debt at 40,000. Well, actually 50,000, because it's 2.5 cycle, but in reality it may really be 3 cycles, right?
So some women will be lucky and will be 1 cycle, but other I've seen women who've had 6 failed cycles.
Ooh. Wow.
It's terrible. And I've also heard of women who've had 6 failed cycles and used restorative reproductive medicine and had a healthy pregnancy.
Okay.
So, that's interesting, isn't it?
It is, because like I said, this conversation for me is very enlightening, because I've never spoke about the nuance like we did today. And I only sort of, this sparked my interest because of my friend. And I am even learning more and more that it is almost like it's just set up for profit. Or it is that the mindset is all about the technology and not about actual health, because I think health is something that is really missing here. So what do people still fail to grasp about falling birth rates and what they could mean for society?
I think exactly what I said. I mean, the big question is, if the birth rates are so low right now, what's going to happen in 30 years? How are we going to plan for this? Now, there's some countries whose birth rates have fallen before others. For instance, Japan has had a low birth rate for many years. They have an imbalance in their population. They have many, many elderly. They have programs now. They're a program where they're bringing immigrants from India and training them how to look after their elderly. So, immigration is going to be a big way. But the problem is that this is a worldwide problem. The only continent that is not in the negative when it comes to fertility rates is Africa. So I can imagine that in 30 years, everybody is going to want immigrants from Africa to come and work in their societies to sustain their society. But there's only so many people to go around, and Africa is going to want to keep its own population to keep their societies running. So we're going to have to restructure things. I don't think we can rely on robots, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe AI is going to step in and fix everything. I really don't know. It's quite a quandary. It's worrisome.
It is. And wow, that's interesting. So Africa is the only place with, I guess, positive birth rates. Mm-hmm. So it is almost like if we continue at this rate and in 100 years, most of the Western populations are much lower and dying out, it means then that the world would be, the African population would probably be the majority of the population on the planet, you know?
Yes, potentially.
Man, this is very, very interesting. So for someone who wants children one day, what are the simplest things they can start doing now to improve fertility naturally?
So it's always about basics. Your diet, how much you exercise, how much you sleep and how good your sleep quality is, how you manage your stress, and trying to avoid the chemicals in our environment. So it's a combination of all of those things. I know it sounds like a lot, but it is very manageable and doable. When my patients come to me asking this, I start with one thing at a time, and we just basically try to address one thing as best as we can and get to the next thing. And slowly, as the weeks progress, they see their health change, and it's quite amazing to see, actually.
Yeah, and I think that, like we said, like I've said a few times in this conversation, I think like people just start getting into shape. Like you can do wonders by doing that, as well.
Yeah.
So let's get you on this one. For couples who feel late, frightened, or exhausted by this journey, what do you most want them to hear?
I want them to know that more is in control than they realize. They don't have to feel that they're being pushed into technology. I'm not against IVF by any means, because it has created wonderful families for people. But the reality is here in Ontario, where I live, if you want the government-funded IVF, you're going to have to wait 2 years. So what I suggest is you start improving your lifestyle while you're waiting. And who knows, maybe you won't end up needing the IVF. But even if you do, your chances of conception are better if you're healthier.
Absolutely. And remember what Dr. Marina said about stress levels and quality of eggs. So you have to bear that in mind as well. And Dr. Marina, this has been a very interesting conversation. And I never thought I would cover fertility to this detail, but I learned a lot today, and it very much sparked my interest, mostly because of my friend. And then also, I do see that we have a general problem in the world with birth rates, and fertility is part of that conversation of birth rates as well, because I don't think that is necessarily that we're having less sex. I think it's a situation where we're just simply not procreating, or it could be both at the same time. Who knows? But I think that fertility is definitely part of the conversation for birth rates, and the population is just not increasing dramatically in the West. So with that being said, tell the lovely people at the Conscious Man 7 where they can find you. Tell us the name of your book, where we can find that, and if you help people as well, like remotely and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Well, my website is drmarinaobgyn.com, drmarinaobgyn.com. My Instagram is dr.marina.obgyn. My book is called Optimize Your Fertility Naturally. It's actually already on Amazon on a pre-launch sale. You can purchase the ebook for very cheap. However, you will not receive it until the official launch date, which is June 20th. After which both print and ebook will be available. Unfortunately, I do not work remotely. I will have to think about whether there's something I can do about that. I still have a brick and mortar's old-fashioned practice in Ottawa where I see patients. but I can be reached through my website.
Okay, and guys, links to everything Dr. Marina will be in the description of this podcast. Guys, so you listened to what Dr. Marina said today, and she said that health and lifestyle are definite contributory factors to poor fertility. So if you would like to start that journey and start a family, you need to start to look at yourself first. And I can actually help you to get into shape. I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you want to start a fitness journey, you want to plan for the future to have a family, and you need to start now, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or Todd Cave on Facebook. Send me a message. Let's have a chat and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link to the Todd and Me store will be in the description of this podcast. Also, if you're on a spiritual journey or you would like to start a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, or if you simply have PTSD or CPTSD, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. Hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook, and let's help you to get some magic mushrooms, because we're helping people all over the world to overcome fears and traumas and connect to this subconscious mind. Also, if you are listening to this podcast on one of the podcast platforms and you simply don't like ads, you can consider becoming a member of our Patreon or local store. You will get full access to all the podcasts that we have, but you will get no ads on the platform. And by supporting us with a few bucks a month, you can help support your favorite creator. You can also help this podcast to grow, because it helps us out with things like editing and spending some time doing some research on possible guests and bringing on awesome guests like Dr. Marina. So link to the Patreon and the locals community will be in the description of this podcast. And lastly, don't forget to visit our sponsor of the show, The Kembo, at thekembo.com. Go over there and get yourself some orgonite tower busters or pyramids or some jewelry like what I have on today. I have on my necklace today. So if you want to support the podcast and also get yourself some cool orgonite, head over to The Kembo at thekembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 to get 10% off your order. And guys, if this episode gave you a new lens on fertility, health, and the future, share it with someone you care about. A partner, a friend, a brother, a sister, or someone quietly struggling. Subscribe to the Conscious Man 7 podcast, leave a review, and help get conversations like this out into the open, because awareness now is far better than regret later. Dr. Marina, many thanks for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. This was a very interesting conversation and I learned a lot.
Thank you. I had a great time too.
Guys, to all of the Conscious Man 7 family around the world, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for supporting the mission, and thank you for choosing to look inside of you to heal, as it creates a ripple effect in the world. This was another episode of the Conscious Man 7 podcast, the place where we go beyond the veil in search of the truths that they hide from you, to help you reclaim your power and to step in the truest version of yourself. You are the help that you've been looking for. So remember, folks, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.